Anyone?
Okay. Okay. So may I present my screen, sir?
Yes.
Sir, can you please give me 2 minutes? I don't know. There's some technical issue, I guess.
So we can listen to Shailesh first and you can set your things right.
Sir, it's done. Shall I
Done?
start?
Okay.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Anam Rizwan, and today I'm going to be presenting a recap for yesterday's class. So, yesterday, Dushyant already mentioned about the basic core values of planning, which were goals, plans, and time frame. And we discussed the first two. So, whenever we talk about goals, our goals should be set in such a way that they're smart and realistic. And this brings us to an acronym called SMART, which can actually help us understand the concept of realistic goals. The term SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or relevant, and time bound. So, first, I'm going to be explaining the first three through an example. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I have a sales target to achieve. For example, I say that I have to achieve 1,000 sales at the end of this month. So, this goal of mine is very specific. And the question arises: is it measurable? Yes, it is. By the number of sales that are being carried by an employee, we can measure it through that. And is it achievable? Yes, it is achievable. It is very realistic. It is very realistic. Now, this brings us to our fourth point. That is, when we talk about R, it should be relevant or realistic. So realism or realistic has already made a lot of sense when we spoke about achievable and measurable goals. So relevancy and plays a major role, and it becomes more important when it comes to our goals. Unless and until our goals are aligned with our interest, so they'll not be relevant. So it's very important that our goal should be relevant. Talking about T, that is time bound, there should be a time frame to complete it. For example, I said that I want to achieve 1,000 sales at the end of this month, so that particular 1 month is my time frame. So, from the first slide, we can simply conclude that goals should be achievable but challenging. Between the words realistic and relevant, relevance or relevance stands more important. Realism or realistic automatically comes into practice when we talk about measurable and achievable goals. If we blend all these ideas or all these five elements together, we get a path to motivational goals. That is, our goals should be in such a way that keep us motivated, that can push us to achieve those goals. Keeping in mind these five elements, the process of goal setting takes place. Now, as we already discussed about what are those elements that are important when we are setting our goals, but what is that path that is leading towards those goals? So this brings us to hierarchy of aspirations, in which the first element is vision. So, a vision or foresight is very important whenever we are setting our goals or whenever we want to achieve something, not only in an organization, but also in our life. For example, Sir Syed had a vision to bring a change or to bring reforms in the education sector in India. So, he had a vision, and through this vision, he converted his intention to mission. So, when I talk about intention, comes very important part, that is strategic intention. That is how our actions, how our vision is going to affect this world, or affect the people around us. So that vision, the process from vision to mission, will have a thing called strategic intention. The third element is objectives. That is, objectives are simply the process or the planning that we are doing in order to set our goals or in order to achieve our goals. And objectives are open ended, it can have a lot of things inside it. For example, sir gave us an example yesterday that they wanted to have an enhancement in the physical structure of the MBA department. So it was just a one example. And then if we talk about goals, goals are very specific, as already mentioned in the previous slides. For example, we want to achieve a goal of high sales at the end of this month, so it will be my goal. Talking about my targets, targets have a shorter time frame. It can be on a daily basis, it can be on a monthly basis, it can be on a weekly basis. For example, as I already said, that 1,000 sales at the end of this month is actually my target as well. um, So vision, mission, objectives, goals, and targets is what we call as hierarchy of aspirations. And talking about vision, Sir Syed also had a vision that he wanted to, bring, as I already told, that he wanted to bring reform in the education sector. How he converted it into a mission by doing his stits and bits, here and there, and therefore he was able to establish a university like Aligarh Muslim University. Now, the second aspect of the core values of planning was plans. So plans can be presented in n number of ways. Every person have their own ways or has their own ways in order to, the way they want to present the plans. So some of them we discussed was descriptive. Descriptive plan simply means that we'll have a detailed plan for anything. For example, I'm an entrepreneur or I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'll have a whole plan for that, that where I'm going to get the funds from, what kind of goals I want to achieve, what kind of needs that I want to fulfill among the society. So here's an example like course design, implementation, data collecting and testing. So this is a whole process that is going to take place. Then we talk about the plans which can be presented in a graphical format. That is, to present plans in the form of a bar chart or a pie chart, etc. This simply means a graphical presentation of our ideas. Plans can also be presented on the basis of time frame: long term, medium, and short term. So my long term goal, for example, if I give an example, my long term goal will be financial stability. My medium term goal will be to perform good during my semesters, and my short term goal, before enrolling into this MBA program, was to get into this MBA program. So this is how we can explain our plans in an organization. Then fourth, a strategic plan, simply to make strategies so that we can have an operational plan which is subjected to certain departments. For there can be different plans for the HR department, for the finance department, etc. And this brings us from operational plan, we can have a tactical plan as well. Now, plans on the basis of frequency. Frequency basically can be divided into two parts: single use plan and standing plan. Single use plan is a plan which is we just make and we do it and it's done. But standing plan is a whole process which includes policies, procedure, and rules. It is also a long process which will include a lot of rules that we have to follow, a guideline that we need to follow, so that we can achieve our goals in a systematic manner. Now, so there's a French saying called raison d'etre, which means reason for being. So we should be questioning ourselves, and not only in a business organization, but also in life, that what kind of life we want, what kind of changes we want to bring in the society. So when we're able to answer these questions, we'll be able to have a clear vision and smart goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. What about Shailesh?
Good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. Yes, sir. So I am here to present recap for yesterday's class. Yesterday, the class was started by discussing about setting smart goals. Then we learned about the acronym for setting a smart goal, which itself known as SMART, where S stands for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for relevant, and T for time bound. When we talk about specific, in order to goal to be effective, it needs to be specific. But answer to the question like what we need to be accomplished. When we talk about measurable, our goals should be quantifying, make it easier to track the progress. This helps us to stay motivated and know when we have completed, when we have reached the finish line. Then come achievable. Under this achievable, we learn that goals should be realistic. They should not be set too much higher, or we should not be set impossible goals. They become a damper for us. Then we learn that goals should be challenging but achievable. It's not like they should not be too much easy. They should at least challenging. Then we learn about relevant. Here comes when you need to think about the big picture. Why are you setting the goal that you are setting? This step is about ensuring that your goal matters to you, that it also doesn't affect our other relevant goals that is important to us. Time related parameters building. So you know how to stay on the track within the designated time frame. Like if we didn't set any time frame for our goal, it will be very hard for us to get motivated to start working on that. And by knowing how to set goals using the smart frameworks, it can help us in succeeding and attaining goal, no matter how large or small our goals are. Then we move forward to discuss about strategic intent. Strategic intent can be understood as the philosophical base of the strategic management process. It implies the purpose, vision, organization, intent of achieving. It is a statement that provides a perspective to the means which will lead the organization reach the vision in the long run. Strate- Strategic intents give us idea of what organization desire to attain in future. Then we learn about the strategic intent hierarchy, which include vision, mission, objective, goals, and target. Let's start with vision. Vision implies a blueprint of the company's future position. It describes the where where the company wants to land in the dream of the business inspiration, base of the planning process. When we take the example of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, sir, we he he his visions was that traditional education and modern education should go hand in hand. Then comes mission. Mission denies the firm's business. It ways to reach the goal. It explains the reason for the existence of the business. It is designed to help potential shareholders and investors understand the purpose of the company. Strategic mission identifies the basic task of the enterprise. Then comes objectives. Objectives are time-based measurable actions which helps in the accomplishment of goals. These are the end results which are to be attained with the help of an overall plan over a particular period of time. Then comes goal. Goal are the base of measurement. Goal are the end result the organization attempt to achieve. Then target. Target can be understood as a small step with small time bounds in order to reach the bigger goal. Understand through the example that Sir gave us yesterday in order to build a building, which is our main goal. We make small targets like first we will build the walls, then we will build the beam, then we will cast the slab, and of course we fixed a time that walls will be completed within such time and slabs. Then we move forward about different types of plan that are operational, strategic, and tactical plans. Operational plans are how things need to happen. Strategic plans are all about why things need to happen, and tactical plans are about what is going to happen. Then we also learn about frequency of the plan that are standing and the single use plan. When we talk about standing plan, they are formulated one time and they can be used over times like policies, deform policies, procedure, rules. Then we talk about single use plan, the plans which can be used only once. They cannot be further used. Like sir told us that they plan for building a complex for management. Then it was a single use plan. The complex was built one time. It was not going to build again and again. Thanks, sir. That's all from my side.
Okay, so we had some good presentations today, starting with Shinam, who is basically from Aligarh only, and then she has done her BSc statistics, and accordingly she has prepared her career plan to utilize that unique background that she has for doing something on data analysis and management. That's a logical career aspiration. And she also talked about her strengths. And I only wish to say this, that, at times we have to pamper ourselves. If we have, so saying that I don't have no achievements in life, it is um, being too, what can I say, too much of, khaksari. You know what is khaksari?
Residue.
Pardon?
Sir, residue.
No, no.
Remains.
So down to earth.
Okay.
हाँ, जब मैं अपने आप को थोड़ा लोअर पेडिस्टल पे रखूँ ना, जैसे अरे मैं क्या, मेरी हयात क्या, वो टाइप का,
Sir,
जो कुछ भी नहीं है।
born from the earth soil.
नो नो, हाँ, यस, कि अपने आप को बहुत ही ये दिखाना कि आई एम नथिंग. It is actually opposite of arrogance. Arrogance may we place ourselves one up position, but when
Humble, sir.
too humble. Yes, humble is the right word, Arusa. You're right. So there's no need to be too humble about your achievements, and if you have, so at times we have to focus a bit more on this aspect. That yes, we have achievements, and we may have to flaunt it also. So I think honest pride in our achievements is a better proposition than faking humility. So that's my suggestion to Shinu, and I wish her good luck. Hamad,
Thank you, sir.
you have a good background in the sense that again, BTech with computers could make a good combination, especially in the emerging IT and ITS sector, information services sector that we now have. But I think now, since you are getting into MBA, we need to focus a bit more on, using technical terms in a manner that others can also understand. So, for example, whatever two projects you talked about, I could not make any head and tail out of it. So, communication is not what we say, communication is what others get. So, bringing a communication to their level is our responsibility. Okay?
Yes.
So, how can you explain that to a layman? That is something which you have to think about. In fact, if I can share with you this interesting piece of information that I got about Nalanda University. Nalanda University had a very strange system of awarding degrees to its students. So when the students would claim that now he has learned what he was expected to learn, there was no formal exam. He was asked to go out of the university campus and teach whatever he has learned to a shepherd. So the idea was that if you can bring your understanding to that level, then you are truly wise and knowledgeable. So our ability to simplify ideas. And that is why one of the C's of effective communication is clarity. And clarity comes with simplicity. So that is something, Hamad, you may have to take note of. And Shamil, you have a unique combination in the sense that you already have have a background of a foreign language. You have done your BA in French. So knowing a language is always an advantage in the job market, and especially in the international arena if you want to operate. So a language helps. So now what I noted, even in your presentation, there was, if I can use a slightly stronger word, a bit of, laziness. You were slow, and then बीच बीच में ऐसा लग रहा था कि जैसे आदमी मराकबे में चला गया, बिल्कुल कहीं अभी वापस आएंगे, that kind of. So more alert body posture. I think this is what is you have to ask yourself this question as to why you are not physically that alert. Yes, we all need some slow pace at times. But if it is a continued orientation, then it is something which you need to think of,
Yes, sir.
especially when
Sorry, sir.
you are in a situation where it's a situation in the sense it's an opportunity to make an impact on others. So that's the situation, and we must make most of it. So sounding energetic, and so I repeat the statement which I've made earlier. My teacher, Professor Najmul Hassan, used to say this, that if something is worth doing, it is worth doing well.
Yes, sir.
Keep that idea in mind. And
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for telling me that.
now, Anam, I'm very impressed by your performance.
Thank you,
Very
sir.
energetic, very charged performance, bubbling with energy actually. So
Thank
this
you, sir.
orientation and pleasant disposition, maintaining. If we give an impression to the other person that we are actually into it, we are enjoying it, then that also is infectious. It reaches to others. It recharges others. So apart from the content which you covered, this orientation is something which I like.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Keep that orientation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Mm, And Shailesh, I think you need to work a bit more on your pronunciation, although you covered all the points. But you need to work a bit more on your body language. Body language as also your diction, pronunciation. So these two things, when you work on, you will become even more effective speaker. Right now, you have good content. You grasp the ideas very well, but somehow you were a bit evasive as far as, for example, eye contact is concerned. So maybe reading out more often than required. So if you have already internalized the points, there is no need to get into or referring to the text very often, and in the process losing touch with the audience. Now, let me wind up this discussion that we are having on planning and
Okay, sir.
especially this the two things which we talked about, which were elaborated also by Anam and Shailesh today. That is, we have different types of goals and we have different types of plans. And in the goal setting, we talked about this SMART acronym. That is specific, measurable, relevant, and achievable, and time bound. Now, I'll build up on this idea of relevant. How do we set relevant goals? Because what happens is that in any organization, there are some forces of misdirection. I'll give you an example. And I've experienced it while being part of a large setup, that is AMU. AMU is a huge setup. And there are some forces of misdirection here also. But I give you an example. I will give you an example, a very powerful but simple example, and you can relate with this. Actually, it so happened that there is a temple town, some of you may know, Mahabaleshwar. And a group of researchers, they went there to study how work is being, how such uh, temples are built there, Mahabalipura. So they saw that the work was on, and they approached one of the worker who was working, And he was asked this question as to what are you doing? And his response was that I'm making a living. Then they approached another worker and they asked him the same question, what are you doing? And this fellow said, I am doing the best stone cutting job in this country. Same work, but different way of looking at it. In fact, when they reached to the third worker and asked the same question, his response was even more interesting. And he responded to this question as to what he is doing. He said, I am building a temple. Now, what are the implications? Three workers doing the same thing, but having very different responses to this question as to what they are doing. Goals were very different. What is the most relevant goal over here?
The goal of the third worker who said that we are building a temple.
We are building a temple. So this was the fellow who was able to link his contribution to the larger objectives of the enterprise. He was able to see through his work in the light of the overall organizational objectives. Does it happen always?
No, sir.
It's often very difficult. And if you ask, let us say, very different group of workers in a university also, like for example, there are people who are in registrar office, they do very specialized job. Like for example, they do auditing or they clear the bills. We purchase a lot of things. So we have a bill section, for example. Their only job is to process the bills. They say scrutinize whether the bills are in order, and only when they clear, then it is passed for payment. So there are people who are doing very specialized work. So actually, all work in organization is a specialized work. But that speciality has to be linked to the larger objectives. But the second worker represents that, when the specialization that you have developed becomes an end itself in itself. So the worker who has a sense of pride in what he is doing, I am doing the best stone cutting job in the country. But for what purpose? For building the temple. Now that link, if he is not able to see clearly, there will be a huge problem in the organization. I experienced it during my early days in my career, and it so happened that often when the financial year comes to an end, a university may have some savings. So it so happened that we received a letter. That was my early 90s when I had just joined the department, and we have our seminar library. So we received a letter from Maulana Azad Library that there are some funds available, and if you want to procure some books, kindly suggest which books would you like to have, and we would arrange. And that was the time I was working. The computers had just come in, and there was a lot of what you can call premium on learning computers, and I had joined a private computer institute to learn the basic computing skills, and the three things which we have even now: database, Excel, and the word processing. I was learning that, And I was especially enamored by this Excel. इसका previous version जो था वो Lotus था, तो I was learning Lotus. So I was very tempted to use that learning when this idea came up that we have to prepare a list of the books to be sent. And we had a senior seminar in charge. The chairman said, work with him and prepare a list of the books we want to procure. So I said, sir, it is very easy to do it in a Lotus kind of software, because then you will have the total, that is, you will write the cost of the book and the number of copies that you want, and at the end of you can get how much would be the total order size, because there were funds which were earmarked. So he said, okay, if you know it, we'll do it like that. And we started compiling the list. And I was new to that software, so I often would get stuck. But in my eagerness, I would say, nahi, aisa hi karenge. And ultimately, what happened that in the process, we lost almost 4 or 5 vital days. And then my senior colleague lost patience with me. He said, enough is enough. He took out a sheet of paper. He started writing all the books. And he had a beautiful handwriting, and he wrote the name. He created the columns on a manual sheet. And he said, if you lose the funds, what is the point in sending a very elegant list to the Maulana Azad library? And he said, you keep your Lotus with you. Let me do it by my own long hand, and I will do it. So that way, that day I learned this very important lesson, that specialization in itself is not the end. Ultimately, the purpose was to get good books for the library. If you get a neatly handwritten list which a supplier can read, that's good enough. So the speciality has to be linked to the larger objectives. But unfortunately, or it is the nature of work in all organizations, that they have a specialized nature. The finance people have their own specialty. The marketing people will have their own way of looking at it. But ultimately, all that must converge, and they must know that they are building a temple. It is easy to handle the first person who says, I am making a living, because he is very amenable to direction. Whatever you will tell him, he will do it, because he gets paid for it. But the real problem is the second category. So this is one of the major force of misdirection in the organization, and because of that also, some other complications also arise. We have talked about that strategic plan, operational plan, and tactical plan. There are some people who are above the hierarchy. They have a way of looking at things. And then there are some people who are down in the hierarchy. They have a different way of looking at things. So the hierarchical structure itself creates a problem. And often our bosses also end up misdirecting our efforts. I give you this example also, again from my own context. What happens is, why a teacher is hired? A teacher is primarily hired to teach. And you have a chairperson in the department. He is managing the entire department. Naturally, he also needs support. And I have seen this, that some teachers become troubleshooters of their chairman. So they end up spending more time troubleshooting with the chairman than focusing on their own classes. Like, for example, chairman has to answer 100 odd mails, for example, that he receives. And he comes to the rescue, he says, I will do it for you, fine. But if in the process he loses track of his main job, what will be the outcome? So often bosses also unintentionally misdirect that. Now, what is the way out? Is there a way out? How to set relevant goals?
Isn't this where the term coordination comes in? Like when we are trying to coordinate different activities, when we are trying to coordinate different perspectives and different mindsets and different views of things, of life, then this is where we have to bring in coordination so as to align the thoughts of one person to another person in order to achieve our goals and objectives, in order to maintain the integrity of our plans.
Yes. Actually, that coordination, the basic element of that coordination, we will achieve when one element which we have not discussed in that SMART acronym is implemented in the organization. That is participation. Goals that are set participatively are far more relevant than goals that are set by the top. Yes or no?
Yes, sir, that is rightly said. Because if we are setting a goal for the lower management system, then it is important to have their opinion on things as well, because they might have they know the ground level things, whereas from a top manager's perspective, we know only what we see.
So, and I've seen this, in some of the best academic organizations also. For example, I had got the exposure of IIM Ahmedabad for an year, and there the faculty was very clear as to what is the expected contribution, and it would be specified right in the beginning, because each year their performance will be reviewed, not monitored, reviewed, based on what they had themselves said. And each and every person knew that he or she has to earn 10 points. And there are three aspects of the institution on which they have to earn those points. One, teaching. Second, research. Third, academic administration. The teacher is expected to contribute to all three areas. In the beginning itself, he would specify how much points I will earn on each of these accounts. For example, if he says, I will teach 4 courses, so that will help him earn 3 points, for example. He would say, I would come out with publications in this grade and I will earn additional 3 points from this. And then this would be like, for example, I'll be chairing, I'm looking after the placement of the institution. So the institution has specified how much points you will earn when you do this job of academic administration. So he will earn additional points from there. But another teacher may say that, no, I will focus on teaching. And there have been teachers who were primarily teachers and they enjoyed teaching. In fact, one of such person, Professor Balakrishnan, when he would come to the class, he would say with pride, yes, I did some research in the beginning of my career, but now I don't do any research. I just love teaching, and that's what is my passion. And he would earn, and he used to get, I was told that for last 10 years, he is getting a perfect 9. There was a grading which was done for teachers by the students on a scale of 1 to 9. For last 10 years, he was getting perfect 9 score when he was graded by the students. And he would earn all his points. So a system which ensures participation is a far better system. And this system was coined by again a doyen of management, Peter Drucker. I have mentioned his name earlier also. So in 1952, when I think 1952 or 54, he wrote that book, The Practice of Management. And there he coined this idea of management by objectives, MBO. And he said there are forces of misdirection in the organization. You can check them only when you have management by objectives. It is so very simple to say that we should work for objectives, but often there are forces of misdirection which misdirect our effort from those objectives. So how do you ensure relevancy? You ensure when you have a clear understanding, an understanding which is arrived at through discussions and deliberations and participations amongst various stakeholders. So faculty will specify what contribution he will make to the department. The department's chairman will specify the contribution that he would make to the university as a unit. So if the goals are set in this not top-down manner but bottom-up, lower down people specify their contribution to the next unit. So this issue of relevance, please think through it, and MBO could be one of the answers. Management by objective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just a minute.
Thank you.